At Christmas dinner, my family gifted everyone except me, so I gave them a gift they'd never forget. Ultimate revenge. They say blood is thicker than water, but sometimes it's the blood that stains the deepest. I'm Sienna 30, and what I'm about to share isn't just a story. It's the shattered mirror of a family portrait, cracked by silence, sharpened by betrayal, and eventually restored by revenge. From the outside, my family looked perfect. Holiday cards, polished shoes, private schools, the kind of family strangers admire from afar. But inside those walls, I was the forgotten daughter, the ghost at the dinner table, the one they loved less, simply because I dreamed differently. Before I tell you how my family's faces dropped when I revealed what I'd built while they weren't watching, drop a comment sharing your own holiday family drama. Trust me, this one's worth staying for. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button because we all need to know we're not alone in family struggles. While my sister Helena was celebrated for her surgical brilliance, and my brother Nathan was already rehearsing court arguments at 16, I fell in love with light. With emotion. With the stories a camera could freeze forever. I didn't want stethoscopes or gavels. I wanted shutter clicks. My heart beat in frames per second. Photography? My mother scoffed once, folding laundry like it was more valuable than my dreams. You'll never build a life chasing shadows. You'll never build a life chasing shadows. But they were the ones who never saw my light. The only soul who truly saw me was Grandma Ruth. Her eyes, soft with age, sparkled every time I showed her my latest shot. "You don't just take pictures, Sienna," she'd whisper, holding my hands like they were magic. "You freeze feelings. That's rarer than talent. It's a gift." But when Grandma passed, so did the only warmth I had left. After that, the cold in our house became unbearable, like walking barefoot on frost every day. The breaking point came that Christmas. I had spent the entire year pouring my soul into something beautiful. A personalized photo album for each family member, bound in leather, with gold-trimmed pages, filled with memories they forgot I noticed. Mom in her garden, Nathan winning his debate, Helena holding her college acceptance letter with that smug grin. Every frame, a tribute. Every page, a silent plea. Do you see me now? The house glittered that night. The chandelier above the table sparkled like diamonds. Helena arrived in her tailored coat, Nathan with his law books. I came with my heart in a ribboned box. And then, the unwrapping began. Helena squealed as she received a BMW, a gift from my parents, for all her hard work. Nathan got a scholarship letter to a prestigious legal internship, already arranged by my father's firm. Even my younger cousins opened envelopes stuffed with money and tech gadgets. And me, I waited, smiling, naively, hopefully, until the last gift was opened, and none had my name on it. "Oh," Mom said flatly, not even looking up. "We thought you'd prefer something once you're more stable. Next year, maybe." My father added, "You haven't exactly proven this photography thing is serious." Then came the line that carved itself into my bones. Helena's voice, syrupy sweet. "Maybe when your camera pays rent, you'll make the nice list." And they all laughed. They laughed. While I sat there, giftless, breathless, humiliated. I reached into my bag, took out the wrapped photo albums, placed them gently on the table. No one touched them. Not a glance, not a thank you, not even a word. That night, while the snow fell outside and my parents toasted their perfect family, I packed a suitcase. I left without saying goodbye. I took a train to a city where no one knew my name. I enrolled in a visual storytelling institute, took up 3 jobs, waitress, editor, assistant, slept in shared rooms, learned from every failure. I turned their rejection into fuel. I became the storm they never saw coming. In 5 years, I shot for global magazines, directed humanitarian campaigns. My photos hung in galleries from New York to Tokyo. I didn't need their applause. I made the world clap. Last Christmas, I came back, not to reunite, but to return the favor, to give them a gift they'd never forget. They never called. Not once. Not in the weeks after I left. Not in the months when I was struggling to breathe beneath rent notices and rejection emails. Not even on my birthday, when the only candle I lit was the one flickering beside a cup of instant noodles. My family's silence wasn't absence, it was abandonment. Cold, intentional, and sharp like the wind that whipped through my cracked apartment windows. But pain has a sound. It echoes in late-night editing sessions, in the click of a shutter at 3 a.m., in the way your stomach growls louder when no one's around to care. I sold my first photo series to a small nonprofit magazine. It wasn't much, barely enough to cover rent. But it was mine. Raw, gritty portraits of grief, resilience, survival. A far cry from the polished perfection my parents forced on every family Christmas card. Each click was a rebellion, each frame a scream they'd never hear. And then came the turning point. A chance encounter with Nora Lee, creative director at one of the world's most influential storytelling firms. She saw something in me, or maybe she saw what my family never bothered to look for. "You have the eye of someone who's been invisible," she said, flipping through my work. "That's what the world needs." Under Nora's mentorship, I soared. I shot in rainforests, refugee camps, cities asleep in the blush of dawn. My lens captured what was real, what was raw, what made people feel. I grieved my family in stages. Denial was in the way I told new friends, "We're just not close." Anger burned through every photo I took of broken systems and lost voices. Bargaining happened late at night when I wrote unsent letters. Maybe if I just prove myself. But then came acceptance, and with it, power. 5 years later, I didn't just return home as a photographer. I returned as the CEO of a globally recognized storytelling platform that partnered with brands my father only read about in Forbes. My name was mentioned in the same breath as thought leaders and creatives who were shaping the world. And my face? My face was on the cover of the very magazine Helena used to flaunt on our coffee table. The irony? They still hadn't noticed. Until last Christmas. I came back not to mend anything. I came back as the storm they thought they'd weathered long ago. When I walked into my parents' grand living room, their expressions said everything. My mother's jaw clenched, her eyes flickering with disbelief. My father stiffened, holding a glass of scotch he suddenly didn't want. Helena looked me up and down, her tailored dress suddenly less impressive next to my effortless power. "And Nathan?" He smirked. But behind his smirk was confusion. I wasn't the shy, invisible sister anymore. I wore success like armor, sharp heels, a silk coat that whispered class, and confidence that couldn't be bought at any law firm. "Wow," Helena said, voice soaked in sarcasm. "Look who remembered where home is." I never forgot, I smiled. Just had to go build mine elsewhere. There it was. The silence. That brittle, uneasy silence that happens when those who once dismissed you realize they're no longer holding the cards. I watched their eyes dart to one another. I knew they were wondering what I was doing there, what I had planned, but they would find out soon enough, because this time, I wasn't bringing photo albums, I was bringing truth and receipts. Christmas was coming again, and so was my ultimate revenge. The letter arrived 2 weeks before Christmas, creamy parchment, thick and expensive, sealed with the Mason family crest I used to trace as a child when I sat quietly at the dining table, trying to feel included. The handwriting was my mother's, delicate, curated, rehearsed like every lie she ever told me with a gentle smile. Sienna, we'd love for you to join us this year. Christmas dinner will be at the family estate as usual. It would mean a lot. Love, Mom. I stared at it for a long time. My fingers trembled, not from hesitation, but from the sheer weight of how absurd it was. Love, Mom? The same mother who once told me, "Your kind of passion is just a phase. Art isn't real work, darling." The same mother who watched me leave with no luggage and even less dignity, and never once looked back. But now they remembered I existed. Why? Why this year? The old Sienna would have wept, might have believed it meant something, but the woman I had become didn't waste tears on people who only looked for her when the cameras started clicking. Still, I didn't throw it away. I pinned it on my vision board, not as a hope, but as a warning. This wasn't an olive branch, this was bait. But little did they know, I had my own invitation to extend. RSVP'd with a handwritten note, poetic in tone, sugar-laced with irony. So touched to hear from you, Mother. I'll be there. Wouldn't miss it for the world. I've built something I'd love to share with the family. It's time, don't you think? Time, indeed. 5 years of silence. And suddenly, they remembered my name because the world had learned it first. Christmas Eve arrived faster than I expected. The estate stood just as I remembered. Proud, pristine, posing for admiration like a socialite with secrets. But this time, it didn't make me feel small. It felt hollow, like a stage too tired to host another charade. I walked in wearing a velvet emerald dress that kissed the floor like royalty returning to a kingdom that once cast her out. My hair was swept into a soft bun, my lips crimson with confidence, and around my neck, the Cartier camera charm necklace that had become my signature. A quiet nod to the passion they once mocked. The hallway smelled of cinnamon, old wood, and something else. Expectation. They were waiting. The dining room sparkled with crystal, gold-rimmed plates, and polished silverware, all laid out as if wealth could erase what was rotten underneath. My father was at the head of the table, Helena and Nathan to his right, my mother poised as ever across from them. No seat for me. Of course, but this time I didn't need an invitation to sit at a table I now owned in worth and power. Good to see you all, I said calmly, brushing past their stunned faces and pulling out a chair myself. Their greetings were awkward, thinly veiled beneath smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Nathan raised his glass. To family. The ones who show up eventually. A jab. How predictable. I smiled sweetly. Yes, eventually, some things bloom louder than they were ever watered. My mother cleared her throat. So, Sienna, you mentioned you wanted to share something with us? Oh, I did. The room quieted. Knives stopped cutting. Even the flames in the fireplace seemed to lean in. I've spent the last 5 years building something, I began, my voice calm but laced with gravity. It started with nothing. Just a second-hand camera, a leaky apartment, and a grandmother who believed in me when no one else did. Helena rolled her eyes. Here we go. I turned to her, my gaze steady. No, not, here we go. You haven't heard this story yet. I pulled out my tablet, connecting it to the living room projector. The same one they used to play home movies where I was always out of frame, and then I showed them, not just my work, but the truth. Photo after photo, story after story, refugees smiling through grief, children finding light in shadows, women rebuilding cities with calloused hands, moments of pure humanity captured with the lens of someone who was once forgotten, now unforgettable. The final slide came up, a cover of Time magazine. My face, the headline, the woman who captured the world's wounds and healed her own. Silence, cold, heavy, the kind that demands reverence. Then, my mother whispered, "Sienna, we didn't know." I looked straight into her eyes, those same eyes that once looked through me. "You didn't care to." And just like that, the table had turned. But the main course? That was still to come. Because this Christmas, the girl they left behind had returned. Not for closure, but for consequences. This wasn't just a dinner. This was the prologue of their reckoning. I wish I could tell you they apologized after the Christmas dinner, that someone stood up, maybe my mother, maybe my father, and said, "We're sorry for the years we treated you like a shadow." But no, they just sat there, stunned, their mouths half open, hearts half hardened, clinging to the silence as if speaking would admit guilt. After I left that night, the cold outside felt warmer than the chill in that dining room. I drove through the city lights with my hands trembling on the steering wheel, not from fear, but from release. The truth was no longer locked inside me. I had delivered it, and now it would echo in their perfect halls every day they walked across floors owned by the daughter they'd never believed in. For days, no one called. No text. Not even a single passive-aggressive emoji. It was like I never existed. Again. But this time, it didn't hurt the same. This time, the silence wasn't a punishment. It was proof. Proof that they had seen the truth, and it scared them. I went back to my studio apartment in the city, surrounded by plants and books, and life I built with my own 2 hands. I curled into the soft couch I bought with my first paycheck and stared at the ceiling, thinking of Grandma. She would have smiled so wide if she had seen me at that table, poised, unshaken, powerful. That night, I found her old locket buried in my drawer. I opened it and whispered, "I did it, Grandma. I really did." Days turned to weeks. Then one morning, my phone rang. It was Emily. Her voice was coated in fake sugar, but I could taste the desperation underneath. "Hey, Sienna. Dad's thinking about selling the company. He mentioned you. Said maybe you'd be interested." I almost laughed. The company that never considered me smart enough, never thought I had business sense. Now they needed me? "Oh," I said sweetly. "I thought I wasn't the family material. I'm surprised he remembers I exist." Emily sputtered, but I didn't give her the satisfaction of comfort. I told her I'd think about it, but inside, I already knew. I wouldn't just buy the company, I'd transform it. I met with a legal team the next day. My own board, my own strategy advisors. The same people who had helped me build my design empire were now helping me take the legacy that once ignored me and spin it into something fresh, fierce, and mine. By February, the papers were signed. I was the majority shareholder of Blake & Company. My father didn't even fight me on it. Maybe he knew he couldn't anymore. Maybe he saw it in my eyes at Christmas, that the girl he dismissed had become the woman he could never control. When I walked into the boardroom for the first time, the same one I'd been banned from years ago, I wore the same perfume Grandma had gifted me before she passed. "Smell like yourself, always," she'd said, and I did. The boardroom smelled like roses, strength, and poetic justice. Nathan wouldn't even look me in the eye. My father called me Miss Blake. And my mother? She didn't come to the meeting. She stayed home. Of course she did. Because the woman sitting at the head of the table wasn't the daughter they once overlooked. She was a storm in silk, a woman who rose from neglect and turned it into legacy. That night, I walked out of the building with the keys to their past and the pen to write my own future. And in the silence that followed, I smiled, because sometimes revenge isn't fire, it's grace wrapped in gold. And mine had only just begun. The day I stepped back into the mansion, the same one I once left without so much as a goodbye, was the day they finally saw who I had become. Not the black sheep, not the invisible daughter, but the storm they never saw brewing. I wasn't just visiting. I had been invited to a family gathering. The irony wasn't lost on me. They hadn't gathered for me since I turned 18. I walked through the grand entryway, heels clicking against the marble floors like a metronome of destiny. The house looked the same, but it smelled different. Hollow, like old perfume and tired secrets. The walls still had the same portraits: Dad in his boardroom, Emily in her graduation gown, Nathan with his smug smile from winning the state debate championship. And none of me. Not one. That said more than any words ever could. Emily opened the door and tried to smile. "Sienna, you look... wow." I looked her up and down. Her designer outfit, the faint lines of worry in her eyes, the forced warmth in her voice. She was unraveling, and it was delicious. "Thanks," I replied softly. "Success will do that to a girl." Dinner was served in the same dining room where they'd once handed me an empty gift bag at Christmas. Only this time, I didn't come empty-handed. Dad sat at the head of the table, as if his authority hadn't already crumbled. Mom kept avoiding my gaze, her fingers twitching with every clink of silverware. Nathan scrolled on his phone, pretending none of it mattered. I let them pretend. Until I stood up. "Before dessert," I said, voice steady, "I brought something for the family." They froze. I handed Emily a glossy envelope. She hesitated, then opened it. Inside were copies of the new company ownership documents, showcasing my full control of Blake and Company and the sale of several major family assets. Assets they didn't know Dad had used as collateral years ago when his debts piled up. "You see," I began, pacing slowly, "when you spend your life making your daughter feel invisible, don't be surprised when she learns how to move in silence." Dad turned pale. "You bought us out?" "No," I smiled. "You sold yourselves out. I just picked up the pieces." Emily gasped. Mom finally spoke. "Why would you do this?" I leaned down beside her. "Because for years you gave your love like it was currency, and I was always broke." I turned to Nathan. "And you?" "You mocked me for my hobby. You'll be happy to know that Hobby now owns the patent for the very technology your startup wanted to license." His face flushed. "You did this to humiliate us?" "No," I whispered. "I did this to heal myself." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was thunderous. I walked out, not in anger, but in power. Outside, the winter wind kissed my skin, and I looked up at the stars. Somewhere, Grandma was smiling. They built their world by pushing me down. Now I had built mine by standing tall, and that was the most beautiful revenge of all. They thought my silence was surrender. What they didn't know was that silence is where storms are born. I had spent years in the shadows, not hiding, but building, listening, learning, preparing, and now, every suppressed scream, every tear swallowed in the quiet of my old bedroom, every birthday I sat through while they celebrated someone else, that silence had finally found its voice, and my voice had become a weapon. After the dinner, my name echoed in every corner of their world, in boardrooms, in press releases, in whispered gossip between family friends who once pitied me. Now they envied me. I wasn't just the black sheep anymore. I was the shepherd, the architect of their collapse and the savior of my own soul. Emily tried to reach out, of course, a half-hearted apology wrapped in self-pity. "You've changed, Sienna. You're not the same." I smiled. "No, Emily, I'm just finally being seen." She cried, and maybe once upon a time, I would have comforted her. But now? Now I recognized those tears for what they were. Regret for losing control, not remorse for the years she had a hand in breaking me. Mom went quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't ask for forgiveness, but hopes for forgetfulness. She began inviting me to charity galas, not out of love, but so she could name drop me to her friends, so she could say, "That's my daughter. Yes, the successful one." I declined every single one. Respect isn't earned by blood, it's earned by behavior. And my father, he tried the proud father act at a business conference where my name was on every screen. I saw him corner a CEO, his voice dripping with false pride. "That's my daughter, Sienna." The CEO turned, confused. "I thought you were the one she bought out." The humiliation on his face? Divine. I didn't have to say a word. The world had already spoken for me. I started scholarships in my grandmother's name because she, and only she, believed in me when I had nothing but dreams and empty hands. Her framed photo sits on my desk. Every win is hers too. And then, one day, I returned to that mansion again. Not as a guest, not as a ghost of a forgotten daughter, but as the new owner. The house had gone up for sale after their financial ruin. I bought it, not to live in it, but to reclaim every square foot of pain they left inside its walls. I walked through the hallways slowly, fingers brushing over doorframes that once held memories of muffled sobs and slammed doors. I stood in the living room where I was once overlooked and smiled. This was no longer a house of pain. It was my monument to growth, to grit, to glory, to revenge. So if you've ever been the overlooked child, the one dismissed, silenced, forgotten, hear me when I say this. You are not broken. You are becoming. And one day, your silence will become your strength. Your pain will become your power. And your story, your ultimate revenge, will be the storm they never saw coming. Revenge wasn't just served. It was engraved in marble. I stood in the heart of the city, beneath a towering building that bore my name in bold letters. The Sienna Foundation, empowering the forgotten. This wasn't just my legacy. It was a declaration, a vow to every girl silenced at dinner tables, every dream crushed under the weight of expectation, every outcast who was told they weren't enough. I didn't just rise. I rebuilt the world that tried to bury me. My parents now lived quietly, far away from the echo of the name they once ignored. Mom had aged not in years, but in guilt. Her eyes were hollow mirrors reflecting the daughter she never tried to understand. Dad barely left the house. His pride had collapsed under the weight of my success. Emily? She still chased validation in filters and likes, her once envied life now a hollow display of curated perfection. She reached out once again, not for forgiveness, but for favor. She wanted help with a business idea. Something small, something trendy. I told her the truth with a smile. I only invest in potential, Emily, not in repetition. Her silence was the closure I didn't know I needed, but not all of them faded. One evening, I received a letter in handwriting I recognized immediately. It was from my mother. "You were right. I didn't see you. I didn't hear you. And I'm sorry. You didn't deserve the silence we gave you. I only hope you found what we never gave. Peace." I folded the letter and tucked it into my grandmother's cookbook. The same book we used to read together while the others laughed without us. That woman had raised me on strength and stories. Her memory whispered through my every victory. And as for the house, the mansion I had bought not out of spite, but justice, I turned it into a shelter. A sanctuary for young women with dreams the world tried to silence. In every room once filled with cold judgment, there now echoed laughter, ambition, and healing. I didn't just rewrite my story, I gave the pen to others, because ultimate revenge isn't always about destruction. Sometimes it's in creation, in rising so brightly that those who once dimmed you are blinded by your light, in turning the ashes of betrayal into bricks of purpose. Before I walk away from this chapter, I'll tell you this. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe your pain an apology, and you are not alone. So, if you've ever felt left out at a table that was supposed to be yours, build your own table. Make it bigger. Make it louder. Make it a place for the voiceless. That's what I did. And now I live not just in success, but in significance. Because in the end, the greatest legacy isn't what we gain, but what we give back after we've survived, and that is the ultimate revenge.